Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks.
Hi there, welcome back. Okay, this will be the last episode for this week. There will not be an episode next Monday, so I'll be back on Wednesday of next week. Happy Father's Day to all the real dads out there, by the way, not the fake ones pretending to be dads like the women pretending to be boys and all of that other stuff, but, the real dads who do the real dad work. Again, happy Father's Day to them. And okay, here we go. Let me get into this. Just very briefly, there's been a lot of talk, of course, about the fact that these riots that have been taking place, well, we know that it's all staged. We're well aware of that. But the real reasons why it was taking place in Los Angeles, and that it didn't have anything to do with ICE per se, and it's not that even individuals, again, who are illegals were being arrested, although that's completely lawful. And it's happening all over the United States and has been, which is great. Including in the county where I live, which I believe has at least 1,115 detainees in our sheriff's department holding cells. And many of them, as I was perusing through the PDF, many of them are on hold for ICE. And it says so at the bottom of each individual page under their mugshot, on hold for ICE. So this is a very big deal, which is very good, and this should continue to happen because it's lawful. Get rid of illegal aliens. It's not a difficult thing. However, regarding Los Angeles, there was this post the other day from Wall Street Apes, and they said the following. They said, wow, the real reason behind the Los Angeles riots. I looked this up, and it's true. A fashion tax evasion investigation raid was happening, and that's why ICE was in Los Angeles. Over $97 million in money laundering from Mexico into California. Democrats fueled the riots the same day. It says the ICE operations in the fashion district, specifically targeting Ambience Apparel, were part of a criminal investigation into money laundering, tax evasion, and customs fraud. According to reports, the investigation involved a company that underdeclared over $80 million in goods and failed to pay $17 million in fees, with some of the money allegedly being laundered to fund cartel activity in Mexico. It says the ICE raids began around June 6th of 2025 and sparked significant protests and riots in downtown Los Angeles, particularly in the fashion district and outside federal buildings. The unrest was fueled by the perception that the raids were immigration sweeps, though officials clarified they were targeting criminal activities like tax evasion and money laundering. It says how many California Democrats were involved in this scam to rally the whole city to riot and have their media blasted on every channel. And again, there's a video explanation of a woman basically saying the exact same thing. So that doesn't surprise me that there would be, of course, more illegal activity taking place around the exact same time that these other raids are occurring. What's interesting, of course, is that the National Guard being called in, they're called in to protect federal property, which is exactly what they're doing. I mean, you don't see National Guard and tanks out on the streets rounding people up because that's not what they're doing. Same thing with the military or the Marines per se. Again, if all of that's actually happening, which I have no doubt that it is, they're basically protecting federal buildings and federal property. Again, they're not on the streets rounding up individuals, and they're not doing that because that's not their job and that's not what they've been ordered to do. Again, in fact, as I'm recording this, there's Governor Pritzker, Hochul, and Walz basically testifying, so to speak, in front of the House Judiciary Committee, and they are being basically brought in because they are, of course, the governors of states who support sanctuary. Now, it's not that they have to have sanctuary laws in place in order to, of course, break the law. Tim Walz himself was just like, hey, look, I'm not in a position to round these individuals up. That's not my job. That's for the federal government, not our state government, and blah, blah, blah. So, that's their job. Well, as it turns out, it is your job. It's the job of sheriffs. It's the job of any law enforcement individual who, again, knows that there are illegal aliens in your state to round up those individuals and get rid of them. So, again, all of this sort of Mr. Nice Guy talk that they like to engage in, it doesn't absolve them of their responsibility. They have a responsibility as governors to round these people up. We just know that they aren't doing that because they're full-blown communists. And again, one of the other phrases, in particular from a historic standpoint, which I just love, and you can predict that this is going to happen on a day in and day out basis, certainly from the left. And even the right does it too, because in many cases they're equally as stupid. But certainly from a historic standpoint, but they consistently reference the Gestapo. And they'll openly say, well, these are Gestapo tactics and it's just like Hitler's Gestapo. Well, the fact is that back then, the police force, the militarized police force, as a result of voting in the National Socialist DAP party, their job was to enforce existing law that had been made, which again was rooting out communism. That was their job. That's exactly what they were supposed to do. So if individuals refused to leave their businesses, even though they were engaging in communistic political practices, which were illegal at the time and became illegal at the time, the Gestapo would show up and they would say, you've been told to seize your business and stop doing what you're doing. And of course, they would remove them. And in many cases, they wouldn't remove them. They would just, again, they would paint a Star of Remphan on their window and they would say, a communist works here. This is a communist-owned business. You need to know this, and if you choose to not shop here, then that's your choice. And if you choose to shop here, then that's your choice. The point that I'm making is that the two things cannot be compared historically because they aren't the same. In this particular case, yes, you have the federal government getting rid of illegal aliens because they are illegal. It just so happens that the communists, and of course many of the illegal aliens are communists, but at the exact same time, you have politicians backing those illegal aliens. That's the problem, which is why every single person is clamoring for politicians to be arrested because those are the real communists. They are the real problem. Same thing again with the moneylenders and the bankers and the financiers and the people again who are ponying up all the money to support these people, let alone completely support and fund all of these riots and all of these movements and these organized movements. All of that, again, is communism. That is our problem. So again, when, I completely disagree with him when Donald Trump the other day, speaking to members of the military at a military graduation, if I'm not mistaken, he was openly saying, we won World War II and good thing that we did or we'd all be speaking German. I wish that everybody would stop saying that because that's historically inaccurate also. None of that was going to take place. Adolf Hitler and the boys were not interested in us speaking German. They were not interested in, again, America being just like them. They wanted to be their own country. They wanted to be, again, a nationalistic country. So do we. And yet here we are. And we're fighting the same problem and the same enemy that they fought, that we actually helped defeat, or support rather. We supported, again, Germany's enemy back in the day. Huge problem. But all of this, again, good thing because we'd be speaking German. It's so insulting to those of us that understand real history and have read it and understand, again, what was really going on back then. We're fighting the same enemy today that the Germans were fighting back then. And the reason that we're fighting them again today is because we never got rid of them in the first place. Communism is a disease, and it spreads. It's highly contagious. Again, look at the entire school system. Look at basically our entire government. No one seems to care, and I fully understand, again, the Q post having to do with saving Israel for last and all of the different meanings behind that. But again, being on the brink of war, allegedly, with Iran is, of course, going to expose Israel even more because Israel's chomping at the bit to fly their dirty little planes over there and bomb as many sites as humanly possible. Of course, that would lead to an all-scale war, certainly over there, which would not be a good thing. Certainly from an optics standpoint, I mean, these are the stories that we're being told, so if they're to be believed at face value, then that certainly seems to be the case. But this is not what the American people want. I've been over the statistics in the past, too, when it came to World War II. The vast majority of Americans didn't want it. They needed a false flag. They needed Pearl Harbor to take place in order to garner more support for World War II. But it was the Japanese who did that, not the Germans. Not to mention, again, a lot of it was a false flag. The explosions came from inside of Pearl Harbor, not from planes. With that said, look who we went and fought. Yeah, we went and fought the Japanese. but we immediately declared war on everybody else. Again, false flags to foment war is exactly what Mossad does. It's what the CIA does. It's what our government does. And the hypocrisy of all of these congressmen and women and senators, in particular on the right, should be glaring to everybody. They'll openly say that they support Israel, they're our number one ally in XYZ, but then Donald Trump says, look, Iran can't have any nuclear weapons. I don't even think they do. But again, he openly says, too, that we don't want war, and that's not the option that we want, when in fact it is Israel's option, and that's what they want. So, I know it's a confusing back and forth right now, and it's not a bad time to even step away from it for a little while and just take a deep breath and relax, because so much of it is a psychological operation and completely overwhelming. But with that said, it doesn't mean that we can't glance and pay attention to some moves that are being made, and there's a lot of suspicious moves being made. Now, this more specifically was an interesting comment, and again, it's accurate. This is from Zero Hedge, and Larry Klayman was having a conversation with Greg Hunter on USA Watchdog. And here's just a little quotation of what he said here regarding all of these riots. He said, quote, "We knew this was coming. This is more than just an insurrection. This is a Bolshevik-style revolution. It's not just Bolsheviks, but it's every conceivable leftist radical group. This is financed undoubtedly by people like George Soros. Karen Bass is a DEI affirmative action mayor in Los Angeles. She was going to be Biden's second choice to be vice president, God forbid. They are using her. The left is using her, and they are using Newsom and others. They want there to be some kind of tragedy in LA. They want there to be some kind of Kent State where someone gets killed. They want one of these protesters to be killed by the National Guard or by the military. This will be a flashpoint to carry forth this Bolshevik revolution. They want to take this country down to ground zero. This is what they are trying to do. They want to destabilize the country and bring these radicals out." It says, Klayman goes on to say there is undoubtedly foreign money involved, probably from communist China, Iran, and North Korea. That's where he's wrong. I'm not doubting that some of those countries would filter money into the United States to engage in such a thing, but the fact is they don't have to go that far for the money. This is not a Chinese thing. Again, this is where he gets the history of this wrong. He says, well, this is the playbook. This is China and Mao. This is exactly what happened. The Chinese did not create communism. The Chinese are not Bolsheviks. Jews are. They're the ones that created it. They're the ones that are enjoying all of this domestic terrorism and this domestic communism and all of this distraction. They're the ones that are enjoying all of this. Again, it's Flag Day. It's before Flag Day. Last year, Flag Day was relatively calm. At least as memory serves, no one really, was paying attention to one thing or another necessarily beyond basic politics. But the timing of this, again, is not an accident. Again, I find it fascinating that people don't believe that psychological operations are real, and that you can not only manipulate an individual, but entire generations of individuals into doing and believing particular things. Again, just by offering them certain things or steering the social awareness in a particular direction in order to accomplish whatever goal that you want to accomplish. Let me give you one example. I came across this just the other day. I thought it was an interesting history lesson. This was a table. It was titled Table 1, Examples of Proposed Measures to Reduce U.S. Fertility by Universally or Selectively of Impact. And the source for this was a Frederick S. Jaffe, and it was titled Activities Relevant to the Study of Population Policy for the United States. This was a memorandum to Bernard Burleson on March 11th, 1969. So basically, what is it that we need to do to the American people in order to increase the likelihood of them not having children and decreasing the population? Which, as we know, again, reducing U.S. fertility is a depopulation agenda. You have to do this from multiple angles. And as it turns out in this table, it lays it all out. There's a universal impact. So imagine basically this. There's 4 general columns, but there's 3 sort of, I would say, big categories at the top. From left to right, it says universal impact is one of them. Selective impact, depending on socioeconomic status, is another. And then measures predicted on existing motivation to prevent unwanted pregnancy. Now, below universal impact on the hard left, and if you want to see this chart, again, it's on my X and Gab account, it says social constraints, therefore social engineering. What is it that we have to do with the American people in order to convince them that having children is a bad idea? And it says the following here: restructure the family, or restructure family. And it has 2 bullet points, A and B here. Postpone or avoid marriage is the first. And the second says alter image of ideal family size. And then below that it says the following: compulsory education of children, encourage increased homosexuality, educate for family limitation, fertility control agents in water supply, and encourage women to work. It's worked, has it not? I mean, that alone, all of those social constraints, all of that evil propaganda, all of that deliberate poisoning of both the body and the mind has caused individuals, again, to not want families, to not get married, and to not want children. And many of these people are the ones protesting. Many of these people, of course, exist on the left of the political spectrum, or certainly in the middle. Now, under the second section, under selective impact depending on socioeconomic status, there's 2 categories, 2 columns. One of them says economic deterrence / incentives, and the other says social controls. Again, more social engineering, but you also have to set the framework and the foundation from an economic standpoint to force individuals to not want to get married and then, of course, not want to have children. It says the following under economic deterrence and incentives. It says modify tax policies. For example, substantial marriage tax, a child tax, tax married more than single individuals, remove parents' tax exemption, and additional taxes on parents with more than 1 or 2 children in school. And then below that, it has a list of other economic deterrents or even incentives. It says reduce, eliminate paid maternity leave or benefits, reduce, eliminate children's or families' allowances, bonuses for delayed marriage and greater child spacing. There's a typo on one of these, so I can't quite make out what it says, but then the one below that says eliminate welfare payments after first 2 children. Chronic depression is another one, increase the likelihood of that being the case. Require women to work and provide few childcare facilities, and then finally limit or eliminate public financed medical care, scholarships, housing, loans, and subsidies to families with more than N children, N representing some particular number. Could possibly be 2. Social controls, it says then. Again, this is under selective impact depending on socioeconomic status. Compulsory abortion, out-of-wedlock pregnancies, compulsory sterilization of all who have 2 children except for a few who would be allowed 3, confine childbearing to only a limited number of adults, and then stock certificate type permits for children. And then it says housing policies, discouragement of private home ownership, stop award public housing based on family size. Again, seems like a lot of this has been happening over the last, 60 years? Certainly seems like it. And then the last section again was measures predicted on existing motivation to prevent unwanted pregnancy. It says payments to encourage sterilization, payments to encourage contraception, payments to encourage abortion, abortion and sterilization on demand, allow certain contraceptives to be distributed non-medically, improve contraceptive technology, make contraception truly available and accessible to all, and then improve maternal health care with family planning as a core element, unquote. And again, for those who aren't aware, the sterilization shot, or the Planned Parenthood, rather, abortion pill is actually, I mean, its actual name is mifepristone, but its word, and I should say letter and number designation, is RU-486. Again, RU4, murder, is what it stands for. So these people know what they're doing. They're satanic. We know that. A lot of people don't. But this, again, is how you control a population. This is exactly how it gets done. And you mock individuals the entire time that you're doing it. And people won't be the wiser. Now, there's also this, and I'm just going to stay sort of in the medical realm here, and I'll wrap up with education toward the end. Again, this isn't going to be a very long episode, but as I was saying earlier, of course, a lot of different hearings taking place right now on Capitol Hill. But of course, earlier in the week, and there are no hearings about this right now, although there may be in the future, RFK, of course, removed a vaccine panel affiliated with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, where there were 17 members apparently on that advisory committee, and they've all been cut loose, allegedly. As a result, they've apparently decided to again start replacing these individuals in these particular positions, and one of the individuals who very famously is now taking over, or at the very least participating in this commission, is Dr. Robert Malone. Now, I have questions about this. A lot of people, of course, online are instantly forgetting about Robert Malone's past, and they're instantly saying things like, what a great pick, he's an advocate for all of us, and, you know, he's all about medical freedom and this, that, and the other. Robert Malone is still affiliated with the Department of Defense to some extent. He certainly still has ties to the Department of Defense and the CIA. I am not a fan of Robert Malone. I haven't been from the start. I'm still not. I can think of a lot of different individuals, again, who are not medical doctors, who don't have a conflict of interest, who have nothing to gain. And those individuals would be equally, of course, if not more qualified than a Dr. Robert Malone. Here's why I think this is suspicious, and it ties into something that I brought up on the show a long time ago, although not that long ago, maybe a couple of months tops, is that the advancement of messenger RNA as a viable form of medical intervention, albeit it not really being, but the fact that Robert Malone has patents on certain formulations of mRNA, and the fact that now he's in a position to basically advance that, or even, as I should say, that was one of the suspicions with mRNA, is that individuals, again, would continue to advocate for its use in other medical interventions, so they think. And in the middle of all of that, again, changing their DNA or cancer shots or whatever it may be, you're not eliminating these poisons from the mainstream, let alone from any research facility or anything of that nature. You're just rebranding them, advancing them, continuing to do studies on them, to then only have them come out later on, even for future generations down the line, and say, well, this isn't the mRNA shot from the past, this is a new one, and it's better, and it works. Which means all you're doing is you're recycling, basically, the depopulation agenda via injection with the same or similar names, and just, again, repackaging it and reselling it for individuals by saying, well, look, these anti-vaxxers, quote unquote, were still pushing this. So why would they push something bad when they're anti-vax? I just don't trust it. I think that there's too many conflicts of interest regarding all of this. I think that right there alone is a giant red flag. It certainly is for any research and any research that gets conducted. It's always going to be bias. I mean, you're always going to have individual bias to some extent, rather. Certainly, again, individuals would say, well, RFK hates all shots, even though he says that he doesn't, but he really does, which means every single study that he produces is going to be a study that says all shots need to be eliminated. Well, you don't need RFK to know that. You don't need his opinion to know that. Anybody, again, doing the real history and the real research on the history of inoculation would know that that's the case, that all shots are in fact poisonous. that there's no such thing as COVID, there's no such thing as the flu, there's no such thing as measles. These are all symptoms of being ill, and they are more specifically symptoms of being around individuals who have been inoculated, which is again why they become ill through electromagnetism. The problem is that if we continue to hire these deep state government goons, which, keep in mind, Robert Malone was again attempting to sue copious amounts of people for hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions, for basically, again, questioning his entire involvement in some of this, certainly from the early stages of mRNA development. That, again, why would you sue individuals criticizing you if you have nothing to hide? What's the problem? So, again, I mean, I could ramble on about it for hours, I suppose, but it's a clear conflict of interest, in my opinion. Robert Malone has an image he wants to protect. He has a reputation he wants to uphold as much as humanly possible. I mean, what next? Are they going to get Simone Gold on the committee as well? I really don't know. I would prefer to have, again, individuals who know that viruses are not real and know full well, again, the real history behind these kinds of medical interventions, quote unquote, in the form of inoculations, which again have been designed to make people sick. And then all of a sudden, again, they have an illness and they wonder why. Well, what have you been putting in your body? What have you been swallowing? What have you been ingesting? What have you, of course, been shooting into your bloodstream? I mean, that's really the question here. So anyway, this particular article was from CNBC. Again, I understand the reference is terrible, but it was titled, RFK Jr. names some vaccine critics to key CDC committee after ousting entire panel. And of course, they mention Robert Malone as being one of those individuals. It says Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on Wednesday named 8 new members to a crucial government panel of vaccine advisors after firing the entire group just days earlier, including Dr. Robert Malone. Now, I want to read through these names and some of their backgrounds. Again, this is just what Secretary Kennedy has provided. But before I read through their names of these 8 other individuals who are on this committee, here's a particular post right below it. Again, this is where a lot of people are instantly forgetting who Robert Malone is and who some of these people are, many of which, again, are primarily unknown from the general public. At least it's not Simone Gold. I mean, thank God for that. But either way, here was a Louis Traub individual on X, and they said the following. They said, want to restore trust, ? Quit ignoring the vaccine injured, repeal the EUA and PrEP Act, reform the CICP, investigate AE reports, fund studies, develop treatments, lift pharma's liability shield, end media ads, and hold COVID criminals accountable. Until then, there is no trust, unquote. Again, I tend to agree with that. I fully understand that there's a step-by-step process that has to take place here, but advancing mRNA in any way whatsoever and continuing to advance inoculation in any way whatsoever is absurd. It can't happen. All it's doing is benefiting the wireless body area network apparatus that continues to exist, not to mention it lines these people's pocketbooks also, depending on their associations. So here's what Secretary Kennedy said. He said, on Monday, I took a major step toward restoring public trust in vaccines by reconstituting the Advisory Committee for Immunization Practices, or ACIP. Again, we're not interested in restoring public trust in vaccines. That's not what we want. Vaccines can't be trusted, which means it has to be removed as some kind of a preventative or even medical tool. He went on and said, I retired the 17 current members of the committee. I am now repopulating ACIP with the 8 new members who will attend ACIP's scheduled June 25th meeting. The slate includes highly credentialed scientists, including public health experts and some of America's most accomplished physicians. All of these individuals are committed to evidence-based medicine, gold standard science, and common sense. Again, that's not true. Evidence-based medicine actually comes very naturally from the earth. That's number one. Gold standard science would prove that to be the case if gold standard science were a real thing. Same thing with common sense if people had it. But again, you have individuals like Robert Malone who don't want to hear that viruses aren't real, which is why you would actually need individuals on such a committee who would fully understand that viruses aren't real. Like, again, Dr. Kaufman, Dr. Andrew Kaufman, specifically Thomas Cowan. There are a number of individuals who could easily sit on these committees who don't have a conflict of interest. It goes on, it says all of these individuals are committed to evidence-based medicine. I already said that, blah, blah, blah. The committee will review safety and efficacy data for the current schedule as well. I'm proud to announce ACIP's new members. Here we go. Joseph R. Hebelin, MD, I'm saying that right, is a psychiatrist and neuroscientist with a career in clinical research, public health policy, and federal service. As former acting chief of the section on nutritional neurosciences at the National Institutes of Health, he led research on immune regulation, neurodevelopment, and mental health. His work has informed U.S. public health guidelines, particularly in maternal and child health, with more than 120 peer-reviewed publications and extensive experience in federal advisory roles. Dr. Hiblin, I think is how you pronounce his name, brings expertise in immune-related outcomes, psychiatric conditions, and evidence-based public health strategies. The next person is a Martin Kulldorff, MD, PhD, is a biostatistician and epidemiologist formerly at Harvard Medical School, and a leading expert in vaccine safety and infectious disease surveillance. He served on the Food and Drug Administration's Drug Safety and Risk Management Advisory Committee. Again, what's he been doing over there then? And the CDC's Vaccine Safety Subgroup of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, where he contributed to national vaccine safety monitoring systems. And how did that go? Again, I'm not, I have to be clear here. I'm not being a pessimist. I'm just simply saying he's picking people who have been on the inside the whole time. Is that a good thing? These are people who sat on these committees in the past. I'm just trying to figure out if that's actually a good thing or not. It doesn't smell right to me. He goes on, he says, Dr. Kulldorff developed widely used tools such as StatScan and TreeScan for detecting disease outbreaks and vaccine adverse events. His expertise includes statistical methods for public health surveillance. Again, it seems like wireless body area network stuff. Immunization safety, well, he failed at that too, and infectious disease epidemiology. Again, I don't get it here. He's also been an influential voice in public health policy, advocating for evidence-based approaches to pandemic response. There's never been a pandemic. We've never had one. This Martin Kulldorff dude was involved in the COVID lie. 100%. Are people not reading this? I mean, are they not making any of these connections? Even BioClandestine was like, this is what I voted for. Is it really? I don't think I voted for this. Here's the next person. A Restif Levi, Jewish, PhD, is the professor of operations management at the MIT Sloan School of Management and the leading expert in healthcare analytics, risk management, and vaccine safety. Bullshit. I'm sorry, but every line of this, these are wireless body area network people here. Just seems like they're 100% insiders. It goes on, it says, he has served as faculty director of MIT Sloan's Food Supply Chain Analytics and Sensing Initiative, and co-led the Leaders for Global Operations program. Dr. Levi has collaborated with public health agencies to evaluate vaccine safety, including co-authoring studies on mRNA COVID-19 vaccines and their association with cardiovascular risks. Too late. It's too late for that. His research has contributed to discussions on vaccine manufacturing processes, safety surveillance, and public health policy. Dr. Levi has also served on advisory committees and engaged in policy discussions concerning vaccine safety and efficacy. His expertise spans healthcare systems optimization, wireless body area network is what that means, epidemiologic modeling, and the application of AI and data science in public health. Good God. Again, if I'm missing something, I would love for somebody to point this out to me, but I don't feel good about this in the slightest. Dr. Levi's work continues, it says, to inform national and international debates on immunization safety and health system resilience. Now Robert Malone. Robert W. Malone, MD, is a physician, scientist, and biochemist known for his early contributions to mRNA vaccine technology. Again, I don't get it. He conducted foundational research in the late 1980s on lipid-mediated mRNA delivery, which laid the groundwork for later developments in mRNA-based therapeutics. They're not therapeutics. It's a murder weapon. Dr. Malone has held academic positions at the institutes including the University of California, Davis and the University of Maryland. He's served in advisory roles for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Department, and it says the Department of Defense. Yeah, not good. His expertise spans molecular biology, immunology, and vaccine development. These are vaccine people here. I don't think that's a trick. I think these people actually think vaccinations could work someday, or they actually think that they do work, but perpetuating them is the problem. Here's a Cody Messner, MD, professor of pediatrics at the Giselle School of Medicine at Dartmouth, and a nationally recognized expert in pediatric infectious diseases and vaccine policy. He has served as section chief of pediatric infectious disease at Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center and has held advisory roles with both the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Food and Drug Administration. Again, this dude's been on the inside like nobody's business. Did he ever tell the people around him no? Did he ever say, you know what, this is a bad idea, it's killing people? I mean, he still has a job. Dr. Messner has been a voting member of the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices and the FDA's Vaccines and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee. They call them biological products, for God's sakes. Where he's contributed to the national immunization guidelines and regulatory decisions. Well, how's that gone? His expertise spans vaccine development, immunization safety, and pediatric infectious disease epidemiology. Dr. Messner has also been a contributing author to American Academy of Pediatrics policy statements and immunization schedules. Well, that's not good. Helping shape national standards for pediatric care. Again, I'm sorry. I'm really not trying to be a pessimist here. It's just, it doesn't look good. There's 3 more doctors real quick. James Pagano, MD, is a board-certified emergency medicine physician with over 40 years of clinical experience following his residency at UCLA. He's worked in diverse emergency settings, from level 1 trauma centers to small community hospitals, caring for patients across all age groups, including infants, pregnant women, and the elderly. It says Dr. Pagano served on multiple hospital committees, including utilization review, critical care, and medical executive boards. He is a strong advocate for evidence-based medicine. Again, the evidence is out there already. We already have it. Here's the next one. Vicky Pebsworth, OPPHD-RN. Earned a doctorate in public health and nursing from the University of Michigan. That's not a popular place these days. She's worked in the healthcare field for more than 45 years, serving in various capacities, including critical care nurse, healthcare administrator, health policy analyst, and research scientist, with a focus on public health policy, bioethics, and vaccine safety. Well, isn't that funny? Interesting. She's a Pacific Region Director of the National Association of Catholic Nurses. She's a former member of the Food and Drug Administration's Vaccine and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee and the National Vaccine Advisory Committee's 2009 H1N1 Vaccine Safety Risk Assessment Working Group and Vaccine Safety Working Group, Epidemiology and Implementation Subcommittees. Again, just a career laden with vaccine use, and we're looking at vaccines and watching them. You don't have to watch their use for very long to know that they don't work and that they kill people. But this woman's been in the business for 45 years. Again, think of the people she's killed and been associated with killing. Michael A. Ross, MD, is a clinical professor of obstetrics and gynecology at George Washington University and Virginia Commonwealth University with a career spanning clinical medicine, research, and public health policy. He has served on the CDC's Advisory Committee for the Prevention of Breast and Cervical Cancer, where he contributed to national strategies for cancer prevention and early detection, including those involving HPV immunization. With research in hormone therapies, antibiotic trials, and immune-related conditions such as breast cancer prevention, Dr. Ross has engaged in clinical investigations with immunologic relevance. He has advised major professional organizations, including the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and contributed to federal advocacy efforts around women's health and preventative care. His continued service on biotech, not good, and healthcare boards reflects his commitment to advancing innovation in immunology, reproductive medicine, and public health, unquote. And that's the last of it. I just find it interesting, again, that individuals who were criticizing Malone and his appearances and everywhere that he's gone and all these massive X accounts with all of these followers are now backing all of this, by and large. Again, people are like, RFK Jr. is cleaning house. This is a great move. I'm glad he's getting rid of the people who have been there for a long time. But there are also people, again, that he's picked here that a lot of people have questions about, and rightfully so. One of these individuals, again, is a first responder, very famously so, an EMT, by the name of Harry Fisher. And his account here is at Harry Fisher EMTP on X. And he goes through these particular pics and how these individuals behaved, again, during the entire COVID lie. He says Martin Kulldorff has been a public critic of COVID lockdowns, mandates, and a lack of honest debate around vaccine safety. He's openly questioned the risk-benefit of mRNA shots of young people and has called out the suppression of dissent in public health. He goes on with these other people, Dr. Levi. He says he published and spoken out about the cardiovascular risks of mRNA vaccines, especially in young men. He's been vocal about the need for transparency and has directly challenged the safe and effective mantra, quote unquote. Then he says Robert Malone. He's the poster child for mRNA vaccine skepticism. One of the original inventors of the tech, now warning about its dangers and lack of long-term safety data. He's been deplatformed and attacked for his views, which tells you everything. No, it doesn't. This is where this guy is wrong. This EMT is wrong. Malone was doing the attacking of people who were attacking him for being pro-mRNA. That's the problem here. He says strongly pro-transparency, cautious, but not anti-mRNA. Correct. And these are individuals apparently who are not mRNA according to this EMT. Again, the Dr. Joseph Hiblin, again, he's a nutrition and mental health expert, not a firebrand. He's focused on evidence and immune regulation, and while he's not known for his anti-mRNA activism, he's not a pharma shill either. He's likely to be a voice for caution and data, not dogma. Cody Messner, the doctor, served on CDC and FDA panels and is respected for his cautious, evidence-based approach. He's not a medical freedom activist, but he's also not a rubber stamp for new shots. He questioned the necessity of COVID shots for kids, and he's not a bomb thrower. But he's not a bomb thrower. Vicki Pebsworth, again, she's got a long history in public health and vaccine safety with a focus on ethics. She's not a loud anti-mRNA voice, but she's not a farmer loyalist either. She's likely a push for honest risk assessment and patient rights. Dr. Pagano, he's an old school ER doctor, not a political activist, goes on and on. Michael Ross, Dr. Ross, he's a mainstream OBGYN with a background in cancer prevention, women's health. He's not an anti-mRNA crusader. And then he says, summary, Kuldorf, Levi, and Malone are the most staunchy pro-medical freedom and openly critical of mRNA shots. Well, again, I don't get that. Malone was pushing them. He was pushing them out of the gate. He was saying, it's good for the young, it's good for the elderly, and everybody in between. And then he was saying, well, the young don't need it, but the elderly should take it. And then he was saying, well, wait a minute, it's killing the elderly. And then he said, well, wait a minute, no one in the middle needs it either. And then what did he say after that? He said the mRNA that he developed was basically sold to someone, a group of, again, those two male and female doctors who I think are married. Their names have slipped my mind. They're Jewish, if I'm not mistaken. And he openly said, again, that they ended up altering his initial patent. And it became something that wasn't what he developed. I find that very hard to believe. Who's to say you can't take a poison and just make it more poisonous? It's quite possible that that's what happened. But this EMT's bottom line, he says, is Kennedy's picks are a mix. Says some are warriors for medical freedom, some are cautious scientists, and a couple are establishment adjacent, but with enough backbone, to question the old system. This is a huge improvement over the previous ACIP, which was basically a pharma echo chamber. Now at least there's a real chance for honest debate and actual science. Time is going to tell on that. It'll just tell. Dr. Jane Ruby is in here. She's even criticized me on X for saying a few things. She's gotten a bunch of stuff wrong too, but she's gotten a bunch of stuff right. Again, she brings up the fact that Robert Malone, voted objectively on vaccine recommendations at US FDA when he owns patents and other business interests in vaccines, especially mRNA injections. She's right. Again, another person down here highlights that Dr. Cody Messner knew the facts, yet voted to authorize COVID vaccines for children. Said that children were not at risk from COVID. Even though children were not at risk at COVID, the vaccine could harm them with unknown long-term effects, and if authorized, it would be added to schedules and mandated. So he knew of those, but he voted to authorize the COVID shots anyway. Again, I'm not saying that people can't change. I'm not saying that people can't learn. I'm not saying that they can't learn from their previous mistakes and they can't reverse course on previous decisions that they've made, of course, in the past. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is that we shouldn't just blindly start accepting these individuals because they seem or appear even a little bit to be the polar opposite of the establishment communists that were in place to begin with. We still get to look at these people with a critical eye. We still get to, again, be cautious about all of this. And like that post that I read before I read that long list of doctors initially, I mean, if we don't see particular things change quickly, like advertisements for medicines, advertisements for vaccinations, if we don't see this pulled from television, news ads, billboards, magazines, whatever, the radio, any of these commercials that exist, if we don't start seeing those moves be made, then, I mean, what's changing? Let me give you a quick example. Again, you had this headline in the New York Post just the other day on June 10th. Rare cancer diagnoses surge dramatically among millennials and Gen X. Why is that? Yeah, it's food. Yeah, it's the poison we eat and the things that we drink and the chemtrails in the sky, no doubt about it. But those generations, those are working generations. Millennials, Gen X, these are the individuals still in the workplace by and large. So what's the thing that took place and that happened over the last 5 years that directly impacted the working age individuals in American society and around the world. The forced vaccinations. People say the Jewish lobby is, again, the largest, of course, apparatus that exists in Washington and in the United States. Of that, I have no doubt. But that very same lobby, of course, controls the medical lobby and the pharmaceutical lobby. So when you hear someone, again, criticize the pharmaceutical lobby, what they're really doing is criticizing the Jewish lobby, because they're one and the same. One owns the other. It's just a different finger on the same hand. But again, if this can be chipped away at a little bit and knocked down and reformed, that does not include the advancement of the wireless body area network and all of these tech programs for, again, digitizing everybody's medical history and DNA online, and we know who you are before you even know yourself and all this other stuff. Having all of this, again, medical history and everything just on endless computers across the nation, to the point where it's, again, so tied into the wireless body area network that people are foolish enough to actually believe that they have an illness because their cell phone tells them they have an illness when in fact they don't. And then they just blindly believe it. Or their Apple Watch tells them they have an illness when they don't, or their Oura Ring tells them, and these are somehow viable technologies that people need to have on their person all of the time. I'm sorry, I will never support that. I just never will. I still, to this day, with all of the information that's out there, I cannot believe that people continue to buy into those technological things. I mean, I get nervous when I carry my cell phone in my pocket for longer than 60 seconds. Imagine that. I immediately take it out of my pocket and I go, holy shit, it's been in my pocket for 60 seconds. And then I take it out and I put it away from me because I don't want a cell phone up against my hips. I don't want dual hip surgery in the future. This is the wireless body area network. It's radiation poisoning. It's pre-crime. It's precognition medical tyranny, and it's unnecessary. All they'd have to do, all these individuals, again, all these truth-telling medical individuals, they'll never get the invite, but all they would ever have to do is show up at a congressional hearing or a Senate hearing and just call out everybody. Read the real history of inoculation. Read the real history of how contagion actually works. And have that go mainstream. That's when we'll know that something's actually changed. I understand, again, that reversing course takes time. I know that it's going to take years to hopefully, potentially, maybe get back to the way that it was before inoculation was even invented, where virology was deemed a lie. And people believed that virology was a lie because it is. But I feel like it could be done faster. Ripping off the Band-Aid in a moment like this is going to be a good thing. And if people, again, when you rip off the Band-Aid, they say, well, you shouldn't have done that. I don't trust you. I think viruses are real, and I want more shots than ever before. That's free will. Those individuals get to go take whatever they want whenever they want, and they'll end up dead as a result. That's fine. They want to do that. That's their business. But we don't have to follow them. So at the end of the day, it boils down to, again, like always, voting with your feet. We get to do that too, anytime we want. Okay, sorry for the rant there, but I just find it all suspicious. I'm going to end with this, and I'm actually going to request a little prayer, if you don't mind. I could use it for next week. It's going to be a busy beginning of the week, which is one of the reasons why there won't be a show on Monday, but I will do my best to bring you one on Wednesday. There are some moves that I'm going to make here regarding the local school system. And there are some moves here regarding the placed on paid administrative leave elementary school principal Jason Mers. Give you a quick update without disclosing too much. He has not been arrested yet. The police report, as you are aware, was filled out on April 30th of this year. An investigation ensued allegedly the following week, and the child has been interviewed multiple times now, and his story has not changed. On the record, and he has not been charged with a crime, the principal. There are people in this town who believe that he's coming back. I am not one of these people. There are avenues that have not been exhausted to get him arrested and charged with a crime. I plan on exhausting those particular avenues early next week. Again, just to give you a taste as to how swift and quick some of these moves can be made, there have been sex crimes among educators, quote unquote, all across the United States just within the last few months. And some of these people have been sentenced, of course. I remember there was a case in Michigan where an individual again sexually assaulted another. There were little to no witnesses, if any, and that individual was arrested instantly. It just so happens that that individual was a black male. So he was arrested quickly. But just because people have some positive things to say about a local principal who happens to be, again, Jewish, all of a sudden, what? He's not allowed to be arrested? You may recall this particular case. This was a former St. Xavier employee here in Cincinnati, in the Cincinnati area, again, being a private school, St. X. And she was having sexual relations with one of her students who was 17 years old. She was 40-some-odd years old, 42 if I'm not mistaken. And they had sexual encounters in her office, and she would send him nude pics of herself. And they had other sexual escapades on at least, I think, a total of, I think it was 6 years. She could have been given, she was charged with six specific sex crimes, 6 counts of sexual battery and sexual assault on a minor. And for some reason, her sentencing got knocked down to just 1 or 2. And she was only charged with, ultimately rather sentenced to 3 years in prison. Now, yes, she's a Tier 3 sex offender also, and going to be for the rest of her life. And will be on probation for 5 years after her 3 years, of course, in prison, but all she got was 3 years. And again, she didn't deny any of this. This was admitted to. I am of the school of thought that these people need to have the book thrown at them. Male or female, I do not care. Does not matter. Even if the victim, again, was 17 or the victim is in 2nd grade. Throw the book at these people, 100%. So, time is going to tell on this, but I'm not letting this go. I'll certainly give you another update when time permits, and I'm hoping, of course, that the next update that I give you is that he's been arrested and charged with a crime. So with that said, again, I could use a prayer for next week very early. I appreciate it. Thank you for listening as always, and I'll catch you on Wednesday. Have a great weekend. Happy Father's Day again. Peace.
Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.